You are listening to Housekeepers Chat by the United States Department of Agriculture from 1927. Disclaimer: this is read from a historic archive document. Do not assume content reflects current scientific knowledge, policies, or practices.
This broadcast was aired on Thursday, the 13th of January of 1927.
The subject matter in Aunt Sammy's chat today is a little different from that in the usual programs. How to prevent dampness and odors in brick and stone houses, how to take care of ferns, keep parsley green during the winter, and what vegetables to start in the south window are discussed in the Housekeepers chat. The information has been approved by the United States Department of Agriculture. The menu and the 2 recipes have been tested and approved by the United States Bureau of Home Economics and will be added to the 4th supplement to the radio cookbooks. A second reprint of the cookbooks is being finished this week. Those who sent in their names some time ago should receive the book soon. Aunt Sammy's cookbooks contain all the recipes and menus she has broadcast this year and are sent free to this station's listeners.
Do you ever get tired of doing the same thing over and over? Making beds or cooking, or getting up to turn off the alarm clock? Sometimes I get tired of answering questions about cooking. Monday morning, when I saw the postman coming, I shut my eyes, waved a pancake turner in the air 3 times, and made a wish. I wished as fervently as I could that you would ask me questions about gardens and flowers and ferns. Believe it or not, by the time I had sorted the letters, I found some very good questions which were not about cooking. The first question reminded me of an old brick house in southern Indiana, on the banks of the Ohio, so near the river that one can look across at the beautiful Kentucky hills, but I must be careful, or you'll know just where I visited last spring. I like this old brick house. It is so solid and substantial looking. It has only one drawback: in rainy weather, the moisture seems to seep right in through the bricks and makes the interior of the house cold and damp. Here is the question. My house is damp and causes an odor when closed up. Is there any way of stopping this? Here is the answer from the United States Department of Agriculture. A closed home is always more or less damp in summer because the inside is cooler than the outside air. As a consequence, the relative humidity is higher indoors than out. Sometimes the moisture is visible on the walls or furniture. This condition cannot be entirely cured, but can be greatly improved. Brick and stone houses are, as a rule, damper than frame houses. The odors in closed, dark houses may be due to leaky plumbing or lack of cleanliness, or to mold and mildew which thrive on the starch dextrin and the glue in the wall pastes, on damp wood and fabrics of all kinds. Then again, disagreeable odors may arise from the building material, such as tar papers between the weatherboardings and the floors, or whitewash, or cold water paints containing glue or casein used in decorating. The first thing to do is to let in plenty of sunlight and fresh air. Open all the windows and keep them open. If the house is covered up in shade, cut out some of the trees, possibly all of them on the north, northwest, and northeast sides, where the sun never strikes. There should be no limbs directly over the house. See that the roof and the weatherboarding are sound. See that no rain can get in to rot and mold the framing and the plaster. See that the cellar is well drained. There should never be water in a cellar at any time of the year. If such a cellar cannot be drained, better fill it up. It is dangerous. Dampness in brick or stone houses, plastered directly on the wall, especially old houses with very thick walls, is more difficult to prevent. Sometimes it is necessary to paint the outside of the wall, usually the north wall, through which the dampness comes. Brick and stone absorb a great deal of water, and a long-continued rain beating against the house may penetrate the wall, especially if the mortar is of poor quality and lacking in studding strength, and make it wet on the inside. Where pointing up with cement mortar and painting outside with a linseed oil paint will not correct the condition, it may be necessary to place studding against the brick or stone walls and lath and plaster over them. This gives an air space between the wall and the plaster that permits ventilation and corrects the trouble. Sometimes dampness is due to faulty construction of the house, and the fault is very hard to locate. Where dampness causes bad odors, causes wallpaper to loosen, but not to mold and discolor, the condition can often be corrected, in part at least, by painting the interior with a good linseed oil paint, the final coats of which may be flatted as desired. That's the end of the answer, and a long one it is. Question number 2. How shall I take care of my ferns? They are all covered with white specks. Ferns should be potted in soil that is rich and easily crumbled, and one that will grow garden crops well. Don't use too large a pot, nor yet one which will crowd the roots. Place the fern where it will receive plenty of light, but not necessarily sunlight during the day. It must have plenty of water, too, not at regular intervals, but when the soil needs it. In the home, the most satisfactory method of treating ferns infested with scale insects is to carefully sponge off the fronds with lukewarm water in which whale oil soap has been dissolved. Your seed dealer will probably carry this soap. Hard-shelled scales should be broken with the end of a match as the plant is sponged. This is necessary, as these scales are very resistant to any method of home control. Next question: what kinds of early vegetables should be started in the house? The person who asked this question must be making plans already for spring vegetables. Tomatoes, cabbage, peppers, cauliflower, celery, and lettuce plants may be started in the windows of an ordinary living room, especially if the windows are on the south side. Sow the seed in boxes filled with fine earth. When the small plants have formed 1 or 2 true leaves, in addition to their seed leaves, they may be transplanted to other boxes or into flower pots and grown to good size before the weather is warm enough to plant them in the garden. I'm sending you a copy of Farmer's Bulletin, the City Home Garden, in case you don't know how to plant vegetables. One more question. What is the best way to keep parsley green during the winter? If you want only 1 or 2 plants of parsley, in order to have the leaves for garnishing, lift the plants in the fall, place them in pots of good earth, and grow them in a south or an east window. A potted parsley plant makes a rather nice decoration and does fairly well in the house. Another method is to plant the parsley plants in a well-protected cold frame, where they will get the full benefit of the sunlight during the winter months. Parsley plants will stand considerable freezing. Now, having mentioned parsley, I'm in the mood to talk about dinner. The main dish today is rice and chicken, which is both savory and economical. In fact, it is an excellent way of extending the flavor of a small quantity of leftover chicken into a substantial dish for another meal. If you are planning to have chicken for dinner on Sunday, you might use today's menu on Monday. This suggestion for a rice and chicken dish comes from the Italians, and it is called chicken risotto. I'll tell you how to make it in just a minute. The full menu is chicken riotto, carrots and parsley butter, lettuce or cabbage salad, and apple dumplings with hard sauce. You may want to take a few notes on the chicken risotto. However, it is not a complicated recipe. Leftover cold roast fowl or bony pieces left from the first serving of chicken fricassee can be used. Pick the meat from the bones of the leftover cooked chicken. Stew the bones in enough water to make a quart of broth, adding any leftover gravy or sauce that will furnish chicken flavor. In a large skillet, cook slowly in 2 tablespoons of butter an onion, which has been minced finely. Do not let the onion brown. To this add the quart of chicken broth. When it boils up rapidly, sprinkle in slowly 3/4 cup of rice which has been washed free of surface starch. Cover the skillet. Allow the rice to simmer in the broth for about 25 minutes, or until the grains swell and become soft. Shake the skillet from time to time to keep the rice from sticking, but do not stir it unless absolutely necessary. By the time the rice is done, it will have absorbed practically all the broth, and the grains will be large and separate. Then add the small pieces of chicken which were picked from the bones, turn the mixture onto a hot platter, and sprinkle it generously with grated cheese. The Italians use Parmesan cheese, but any of the American varieties hard enough to grate will be satisfactory. Here's the recipe for carrots and parsley butter. 5 ingredients. 8 or 10 medium-sized carrots. 1/4 cup butter. 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 or 2 tablespoons lemon juice, 1 tablespoon finely chopped parsley. 5 ingredients. I shall repeat them. 8 or 10 medium-sized carrots, 1/4 cup butter, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 or 2 tablespoons lemon juice, 1 tablespoon finely chopped parsley. Wash and scrape the carrots and cut them in slices or dice. Cook them in a small amount of boiling salted water until tender, or for about 10 or 15 minutes. Melt the butter, add the lemon juice and the parsley. Pour over the carrots and serve at once. The recipe for apple dumplings with sauce is in the radio cookbook. Of course, if you haven't time to make apple dumplings with sauce, plain baked apples will do nicely as dessert. To repeat the menu: chicken risotto, carrots and parsley butter, lettuce or cabbage salad, and apple dumplings with sauce. Another menu tomorrow.
This broadcast was researched and produced by BreakAway Empire LLC.